Welcome to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman, helping you unpack the economic headlines and providing real money solutions.
Good Saturday morning. It may be a beautiful Saturday where you are. We're in the fall. The leaves are changing. We've got football in the afternoon, big games, and a heated election season. But this morning, we're going to take on a very hard topic. That is the genocide of Christians. We all heard about the ISIS beheadings a few years ago. We thought, those horrors, they don't belong in the 21st century. But here we are again. It's not the case that people are all of a sudden kumbayaing, being nice to one another. There's been a renewed genocide directed toward Armenian Christians. Now, we have several guests that we're going to talk to this morning, including a dear friend, Didi Lageson, who I've worked with her on the Committee on the Present Danger China. Also, she is the executive director of the Save the Persecuted Christians group. Welcome, Didi.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. It's great to be here.
Well, it's great to see you. Welcome back to Liberty Hawk. I know you've been here before, but good to see you in studio.
We love Liberty Hawk.
Hey, you've got a new short documentary out. I watched it over the weekend, last weekend, Remnants of the Sword. What does Remnants of the Sword mean?
Remnants of the Sword is what the Turks call those people who survived the Armenian genocide in the early 1900s. Those who have survived the attempts multiple times to take out both the Armenians, the Assyrians, and also some Greeks.
You know, I've studied the genocide a little bit. I had a dear friend, Miss Joy. She was the Steinway dealer in Chicago, and her father was Armenian. She's Miss Joy Mager, or Magerian, and a beautiful lady. And so she would go visit Armenia, and she just loved the country that her father came from. Wonderful lady. So I studied. I dug into it, and that is just a tragic history. It's a little over 100 years ago, isn't it, that Armenian genocide?
Yes, so in 1914 through 1918, but it really went on till about 1923, the people of Armenia, Turkey, the Turks at the time, the Ottoman Turks, wanted to eviscerate them, just exterminate them completely, and they suffered. 1.5 million people were killed during those years, and the world essentially stood down and did nothing. In fact, it took until into this century for them to acknowledge that it was a genocide, even though there's all kinds of evidence for it.
Well, there was a beautiful movie that was made not long ago. It's called The Promise, and I wrote a blog post in globaleconomicwarfare.com about it, and the title of the blog post was "None Dare Call It Genocide," because no one acknowledged that this genocide had taken place. It was, presidential candidate after presidential candidate, and props to, I think it was President Biden, who finally acknowledged that it was genocide. Is that right?
Yes, it was President Biden who finally, from the seat of the president, said that there was an Armenian genocide. Yes,
it was a terrible thing. If you haven't had the chance to see the movie, The Promise, you should see it, because what it does is it tells a really sad story, but it's a beautifully shot movie with great actors in it. It's got Oscar Isaac, who played Poe in Star Wars. It's got Christian Bale in it, who played Batman. That's what I think of him as, Batman. I mean, it's a beautifully shot movie, but it tells the story of the Armenians and the Turks, Muslims and Christians, living together in peace and harmony, and one's doctors and professionals, and all of a sudden, the quote young Turks took over the government and decided they were going to kill them, and they literally did.
Yeah, and it was a big move towards secularism at the time. But truly, the Armenians, Armenia, for those who don't know, is in the Caucasus, the southern Caucasus, and they're sandwiched between Turkey and Azerbaijan, Georgia to the north, and Iran to the south. And it's just a terrible place for a Christian nation to be. Armenia was the first nation in the world to become Christian in 301 AD. And they have never wavered from being Christian. Even during the Soviet years, they were practicing their faith in hiding.
Which is amazing. I mean, it is a Christian nation, and as you said, I've read the lore. And of course, I wasn't there, so I don't know the history. But the history is such that St. Gregory, someone who came and brought the gospel to the Armenian people, was thrown into a pit for 13 years, I think.
13 years. Yeah.
And survived. And when they brought him out, he became Saint Gregory the Illuminator, and the nation turned to Christ. It's one of those biblical level stories.
Right. They brought him out to heal the king, and the king was healed. And at that time, he became Christian, and as did the whole nation. But as Armenian history goes back millennia, they're the fourth oldest civilization on the planet.
Fourth oldest civilization. And you say they're from the Caucasus, and you hear the term Caucasian as a reference to ethnicity, and yet that this is where it comes from, right there.
Yeah, well, Mount Ararat, which used to be Armenian territory, now in Turkey, is where Noah's Ark is said to have landed at the end of the flood. And so the Armenians truly are the ancestors of Noah.
Wow, it's the cradle of civilization, the cradle of Christianity, all birthed there, and the intention of the Azerbaijanis is to literally complete and wipe out the remnants of the sword. Those that are alive that they didn't get the first time, they want to come back.
That's right. They want to wipe them off. And they did so last year in Artsakh, which is an Armenian enclave cut off by the Soviets. But they were Armenian and connected by a mountain pass to Armenia proper. And now they intend to take all of Armenia.
And we don't hear this. This isn't in the news. It's not in the press. You were recently, though, in D.C., and Adam Schiff, Representative Adam Schiff, Democrat from California, is the vice chair of the Congressional Armenian Caucus. You testified, is that correct?
Yes, we were at a Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission hearing, and that's a congressional commission. And it was an incredible hearing, though there weren't very many attending.
Well, that's too bad. But it was an official government function.
Yes.
And you were there testifying. Here's the scary thing. The scary thing is that if they intend to wipe out a people, as they 100 years ago, a little over 100 years, 108 years or whatever it was ago, when they started to wipe out the Armenians that were in Turkey and so forth, if they intend to do that now, who's going to stand up? Because I know that during that first genocide, and it's depicted in the movie, the American ambassador to Turkey was named Morgenthau. Now, his son was the Treasury Secretary under FDR, who said, bombed the trains into Auschwitz. He was Jewish. His grandson was a district attorney, long serving in New York, and I actually worked with him a little bit. But the grandfather walked in and said to the Turkish government, "You can't do this. You can't be killing the Christians." And he said, "What do you care?" The Turkish government's response, "What do you care? You're a Jew." And he said, if they'll do it to the Christians here and nobody stands up, they'll do it to the Jews. And of course, that set the prelude for what we had in World War II with the Holocaust.
Very much so. They're looking to finish the job right now, to finish this genocide of the Armenian Christians. And I think American Christians it's more duty-bound, morally bound, to stand up for these Christians who are suffering from this persecution.
Yeah, no, it's a frightening thing. If you watch the movie The Promise, I want to tell you something. That movie, Kirk Kerkorian, one of the wealthiest men in the world, he's Armenian, he promised his mom when he was a little boy, they came here in like 1913, he's long past, he died. He promised his mom, "Mama, someday I'll make a film to tell the world the story of this genocide." And of course, he became very wealthy. He bought MGM, Metro Goldwyn Mayer Productions, one of the big movie studios in the world. He bought them, tried to make the movie. The Turkish government fought him and said, "No, but I want to tell a story." And the State Department stepped up and would not allow him to make the movie. Then secondly, he tried a second time. He sold MGM, bought it back, tried again, and they said no. So he left in his will $100 million. And with that $100 million, he said, "You'll make this movie." They made a beautiful, spectacular film. It should have won an Oscar, but you know what? The Turkish government created a fake film called The Ottoman's Lieutenant that told the same story, except made the Turkish lieutenant the hero of the story, and trying to protect the Armenians. It's a lie. This is the kind of thing that we're facing in an information warfare and a real warfare in genocide. All right, we're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we will talk with Suzanne Grishman from Mercury One about this very same subject. We'll be right back. Here's a $10 bill. It's got the picture of Alexander Hamilton on the front of it. You know, it's kind of sad. When I was 10 years old, Everything that I could buy for $1 now costs about $10. That's the cost of inflation. It's just paper. It's not backed by anything. You can't exchange it for gold and silver. You used to, but you can't do that anymore. And that's unfortunate. You know, pirates wouldn't accept this. Pirates, they wanted gold and silver. Patriots, the founders of this nation, also wanted gold and silver coin. In fact, they put a provision in the Constitution, 17 words, that said states could only make gold and silver coins tender within the states. That's why I wrote this new book, Pirate Money, Discovering the Founders' Hidden Plan for Economic Justice and Defeating the Great Reset. It will explain exactly the history of money and exactly why gold and silver coins can be made modern with new technology and a useful monetary system. PirateMoneyBook.com.
Welcome back to Pirate Money Radio with your host, Kevin Freeman.
On September 19, 2023, following a brutal 9-month blockade meant to weaken and terrorize the people of Nagorno-Karabakh, known as Artsakh to the Armenians living there, Azerbaijan launched its final solution to end the problem of Artsakh once and for all. The bombs of September 19th sealed the people's fate. Starved and fed only with rumors of newly constructed detention camps just over the border in Azerbaijan, the construction of which were later found in satellite imagery. They loaded up cars and trucks. The entire ethnic Armenian population of the disputed enclave of Artsakh fled the only home they've ever known. Today, the people of Artsakh say we must remember the past and protect the future. Azerbaijan's final solution to the problem of Artsakh was over in a day. The unprovoked offensive left 200 people dead, including 5 children, 400 wounded, and tens of thousands displaced and fleeing over the mountains to safety in Armenia proper. These are some of their stories.
You've just been listening to The Open of Remnants of the Sword. It's a recent documentary highlighting a genocide against Christians happening right now against the Armenian people. We just spoke with Didi Lagesson before the break. She's from Save the Persecuted Christians. She's the filmmaker behind that, Remnants of the Sword, and she was the narrator that you just heard. Now, what I want to do is I want to bring on Suzanne Grishman of Mercury One, who's been a long-term friend, and she's been working with the Armenian Christians, and she's been trying to bring attention to this terrible genocide.
Hi, Kevin. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I'm good, Suzanne. Thanks for being here. It's so glad to have you on the program. So you were just in Washington with a group of people testifying about these atrocities, right?
I was. The Nazarene Fund and Mercury One, which is our arm that works with persecution of Christians and religious minorities around the world. We flew in 7 witnesses from Artsakh who were personally there and witnessed all the atrocities and the bombing and the humanitarian blockade for 290 days last year for these people.
Well, explain that, 290 days of blockade. So what we have is we have a nation, Artsakh, that has been, that all of a sudden, bombing, raids, attacks, you get a notice, get out, and then they blockade it. What does that mean?
So in December 2022, Azerbaijan stopped an area that's called the Lachen Corridor. It takes Armenia and Artsakh with a corridor that connects them. And they stopped any humanitarian aid coming through there. Food, gasoline, any kind of medicines for medical needs. And for 290 days, they basically tried to starve to death and move out the people of Artsakh. But on September 19th, they actually bombed the people in Artsakh and Nagorno-Karabakh to move them out. And they only gave them several days to be able to move through that corridor, and there were 120,000 Christians removed from that area, and they are now ethnically cleansing their land that has stood there for over 2,000 years with Christian artifacts and monuments and monasteries. So it really is a humanitarian crisis. And
it's also a war. This is an active war.
This
You
is an active
blockade
war.
people, you start bombing things. What do they want with that region? Why do they have to have it?
One, they want the region there. They are ethnically cleansing it and destroying all of the things that you would look at and say, that is Christian, and these are Christians that have been there for thousands of years. They have made an announcement that they are going to make Artsakh and Nagorno-Karabakh into a green zone, a climate culture green zone. And they are also hosting COP29, which is the climate change conference, in November, on November 11th of 2024.
In Azerbaijan,
in,
not
Az-
in Artsakh.
in Azerbaijan, after they committed this atrocity and an act of war against the people in Artsakh. 2 months later, they were rewarded by the world climate change leaders to host the COP29 conference in this November.
So I just think, I'm trying to personalize this and just think, what if Mexico has decided that Texas land belongs to them? It was theirs at one time, and they blockade us and they try to stop us, and then they say, you got time to get out of Texas or we're just taking it away from you and killing you. And we're going to ethnically cleanse you if you don't belong there. And by the way, the world will love us because we're going to make it a green zone so that we're good for the climate. Well, Texans can stand up. We have a little more economic power than Artsakh, but still, it's the same. That impact to my family would be the same as the Armenian families are feeling.
Yes, it is horrific what they did, and it's like they're changing the Jesus and the Christian land over to the new God, the God of climate change. That is what they're doing with this land in this region.
Are they secularizing? Is there a Muslim Christian thing going on here? Is it all of the above? What's
There's many things going on. They have gone in and they are trying to, what Azerbaijan and Turkey, don't confuse yourself. Turkey is funding this, and they have come out publicly and said that they funded Artsakh's takeover by Azerbaijan and the war. So Turkey is part of this as well. They are removing all of the Armenian writings and all the Armenian crosses that are all over the churches, and they are saying that these were Albanian churches now, which is a complete, utter lie. So that is what they are doing to try and erase and ethnically cleanse the Armenian Christian sites.
So this happened a little over 100 years ago. It happened with the Turks versus the Armenians. They were fully integrated and a good society and almost an example to the world of how Muslims and Christians could be together. And all of a sudden, boom, everything changed overnight, and they attempted a genocide on, well, they did a genocide. I don't want to say attempted. They had a genocide on the Armenian people, and now it looks like, what's their next? I mean, you let Hitler into Poland. What does he do next? What's the next intention?
So they are going to continue to encroach upon Armenia next. That is what they have said they're going to do. They're saying it daily. The bottom of Armenia, they want to create a corridor between Azerbaijan and connect them to Turkey. So that is the long-term goal, but don't confuse yourself here. This is Turkey saying they are going to finish the Armenian genocide that they did not finish in the early 1900s.
Now, don't fool yourself, Christians. This is an attack on your faith. This is the first Christian nation in the world, in the Armenian nation, from like 300 AD. And the intention of wiping out the culture and so forth. So we have a war in the Middle East against Israel. We have this war going on that I hadn't even heard of till it was brought to my attention by Dee Dee and Suzanne and a few others. And then, of course, we have the war in Ukraine. We're in the midst of the beginnings of World War III. It's happening right now in front of us. I think, Suzanne, what Mercury One is doing is phenomenal just to raise awareness. What else are you doing besides flying them here? I know you're doing a road show. You're going to be with Glenn Beck and talking with him. And what else are you doing?
Yes, sir. So we're doing several different initiatives. One, we want the witnesses, we want their voices to be heard. There's a lot of people that were killed during this process, so we're speaking up for the people that can't speak up for themselves. We're doing a media campaign around that, and thank you so much for having us on your show today. We're also focusing on the COP29 conference. Stop COP Baku. It's Baku, Azerbaijan, that they're holding the conference. This is a conference they can hold in a hotel anywhere in the world. You do not need to hold it in a country that still currently has prisoners of war that they took prisoner last year, and that had ethnically cleansed land, and one of the most horrific humanitarian violations on human rights in the world in the last year. So they're being rewarded for that. We want that conference to stop. Baku does not deserve to hold that until they release these POWs and they make this right, if they ever will, which we don't think they will. So move the conference. We're not going to reward them for their human rights. Who all attends
the COP conference? It's everybody, right?
Everybody from all over the world.
Including the United States of America.
Yes, sir. All the climate change leaders in their country come for this conference.
Which is frightening, because it is setting up the globalist, elitist, climate change, World Economic Forum types against the persecuted Christians, and you just don't matter. That's literally what they're saying. You just don't matter.
And we say they matter. They are the first Christian nation in the world. It is our duty as Americans and as Christians to speak up for them and to make sure their voices are heard. And this does not stop. There is no further aggression. We are trying to get some bills signed in the House and get some legislature. This is the one thing that I've been around listening to politics for years, and Republicans and Democrats being able to agree on something is very seldom. The Senate passed a unanimous bill, Senate 3000, it passed unanimously to be able to hold Azerbaijan accountable and stop United States aid and funding going to them. The House needs to pass this bill.
We do need to pass it. We're going to need to go to a break, but before that, let's play a clip from Remnant of the Sword. Play clip 2.
As you can see, we're still stuck in a road. This exodus is unbearable, not only because of psychologically, as many people here, they are becoming refugee already third time in their life. But this exodus, it's also unbearable, just literally physically, because we already 60 hours spent in this road, and we still pass approximately 28 kilometer, and it seems like even during 24 hours we can reach border, because there is no connection. We have cases when people fainted or losing consciousness. They have several diseases, and there is no doctors, and in some cases parents or relatives have to go back
All right, so we've been listening to a clip from Remnant of the Sword. We're going to have to take a break. When we come back, we will actually speak with the Armenian journalist who was just being quoted. In uncertain times, finding stability in the economy can feel challenging. But what if you could navigate economic volatility while honoring your biblical values? At Timothy Plan, they believe this balance is possible. Timothy Plan filters its volatility-weighted ETFs and family of mutual funds through a biblical pro-life and pro-family lens, so you can see competitive returns and moral responsibility, helping you to weather the economic storms. With Timothy Plan, align your investments with your values while adapting to our ever-changing culture. Since 1994, Timothy Plan has been recognized leader in biblically responsible investing. Timothy Plan, your bridge between faith, finances, and the future. Visit timothyplan.com or call 1-800-TIM-PLAN or 1-800-846-7526. Investing includes risk, including possible loss of principal. Before investing, carefully consider a fund's investment objectives, risks, charges, and expenses contained in the prospectus available at timothyplan.com.
Pirate Money Radio. helping you give, spend, and invest in ways that align with liberty, security, and values. Welcome back with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Yeah, we have a kind of a challenging subject for Saturday morning. It's a real issue that we need to be aware of. There's a humanitarian crisis caused by ethnic cleansing attempts for economic gain. It's happening right now. Russia invades Ukraine, and there's understandable outrage from the world community. But Azerbaijan invades Armenia, and hardly anyone knows about it. A little over 100 years ago, Turkey did the unthinkable with the Armenian Genocide, and most of the world ignored it. But the Nazis in Germany, they didn't ignore it. They took notes, and that led to the Holocaust. I met D.A. Morgenthau in New York. His father was Treasury Secretary. His grandfather was U.S. Ambassador to Turkey. They asked him, "Why do you care? You're Jewish." And we're killing Christians. And he said, because if you allow it to happen here, it will happen to the Jews next. And he was exactly right. It was almost prophetic. And we had the Holocaust as a result. We've been listening to Remnant of the Sword. It's a documentary that's out. Let's hear a couple of stories from survivors of the recent humanitarian tragedy with Azerbaijan displacing the entire population of Artsakh.
I am Marina Simonian, 33 years old. I was born and raised in Artsakh. It is difficult to talk about Artsakh in the past tense. It is difficult to talk about what I have been through, what all of the Artsakh Armenians have been through. During my conscious life, I have witnessed 3 wars. I am a lawyer by profession. I worked at the Human Rights Defender's Office as the head of Educational Research and Analytical Department. Both as an individual and as a professional, I witnessed such things that I could never imagine I would witness, even in the worst of nightmares. It was September 27, 2020, when Azerbaijan launched a large-scale war against the whole territory of Artsakh. Azerbaijanis were deliberately targeting civilian infrastructures, carrying out assassinations of civilians. These are not just mere words, but facts recorded by the staff of the Human Rights Defender. The Azerbaijanis raped women in front of their children and then killed them, and vice versa. They would mercilessly torture children in front of their mothers' eyes and then kill them. They tried their best to humiliate and psychologically terrorize us all. They used loudspeakers to threaten us to leave our home. We were receiving SMS messages telling us to leave our homeland, otherwise they would come in and kill us. All this was followed by the blockade of Artsakh. On December 12, 2022, Azerbaijan closed the only road connecting Artsakh to Armenia and the whole world. Electricity and gas supplies were cut. We were deprived of minimum living conditions. People were standing in line for hours at night just to get a small piece of bread. Cases of fainting were recorded in those lines, followed by cases of starvation. Imagine, in the heat of summer, pregnant women had to walk miles to get to a medical facility for a checkup. There were many cases when pregnant women had miscarriages due to malnutrition. And under such conditions, where all the people were tired and exhausted, there was no means of self-defense. Azerbaijan launched an attack once again. September 19, 2023, in the afternoon when the children were at school, I can't forget those days. A chaotic situation arose. Parents were unable to contact their children while Azerbaijan continued to bomb. The city was constantly being bombed by drones. It was a hell. I also remember a case recorded by the Human Rights Defender's staff when a child had a stroke from fear in the schoolyard. Azerbaijanis had already entered rural communities and reached the capital city, Stepanakert. The inhabitants of the villages were forced to flee their homes barefoot, leaving everything behind. All that our grandparents and parents told us, we witnessed ourselves. We thought that we live in a civilized world, the 21st century, all that is in the past. But alas, we saw their handwriting and already realized that if staying in Artsakh, there would be no other way out. We were facing death. There was no other way out. People left their homes and embarked on a seemingly endless journey of exodus. I was one of the last people who left Artsakh and had the heaviest feelings during those days. When the whole homeland is destroyed before your eyes, your whole nation is destroyed. It was not just the loss of the homeland, but the loss of the face and roots of the identity of the nation as a whole.
All right, so we've been listening to that. That's a clip from Remnant of the Sword, which is a short documentary that our friend Didi Laugesen, who was on the first segment of this show, produced. And we'll have Didi back when we wrap up. It's a very sad tale. I don't know, how to do it. I'm sitting here in tears almost, and we have a guest who is a personal witness, a courageous, heroic witness of all that took place. Her name is Siranush Sargsyan, and she came here to visit us at Liberty Hawk. We've just met. Siranush, you lived that. That's not something you see on television. That's not something that you see, in a documentary. That is something you saw up close and in person. Tell us a little of your story.
As you could, I'm really sorry. It's very hard to talk. First of all, I want to thank you for having me and for this chance to make our voice heard. Because beside all these horrors, I want you to understand, for my people, one of the challenging and one of the painful part is that our story are not heard. So thank you for this. Yes, it's also my story, and when I start filming this, first I filmed my family, because it was very hard to even do that, to show your people in that miserable, very hard conditions. But it was our life. One day you wake up and you are in a big prison. The Artsakh was like a prison. But before war, we were comparing our home with a paradise. But one day they made our paradise just a hell. And you wake up, you live in that life. You don't have food, medicine, and it's winter. And kids during night, they waiting in a line for bread and wake up and then go to school in that environment. And 9 months in this hardship, and literally it was starvation siege. When they make people to starve, and when they're completely exhausted, only at that time they attack. And from the first moment, I started to film how they destroying buildings. And the moment when they attack, they also cut electricity, nobody can connect with each other. Just imagine whole city, everyone running from one place to another to find their relatives. I interviewed a lot of women who for several days didn't have any kind of information where their relatives are. Students in Stepanakert were begging some information if their relatives in villages, they are alive. So there was no connection, and I think this was one of the hardest part, all of this, and it makes people panic also. And all these days, all these months, you suffer, and in the end, you had to choose, stay in that condition where you will be killed, like how Marina described, or you just had to leave. And I don't know any nation who can be so connected to their land. But we didn't have choice even to choose. So we just had to leave.
I think of it, for example, if you went to the ghettos in Warsaw during the early days of World War II, and instead of putting people on trains to send them to gas chambers, we'll just blow them up in place. And it's just frightening, the humanitarian crisis that has been created by this, that you have had to live through, that Christians have had to live through. How the people have been in Artsakh for centuries, right? And now you have to give up your home or die. That's the choice you were given.
You know, I'm still, so before coming here, I was transcribing an interview of women who lost 2 sons, 8 years old and 10 years old sons during this invasion. And my colleague, another journalist, asked her a question, what is your dream, Zarine? And she said, my dream is to build a cemetery for my sons. So this is what they made our lives, you know, and this is, I can tell thousands this kind of stories. But it's not only about losing people, it's losing our history. They just literally uprooted us. And now they destroying our cemeteries, destroying our churches, looting our properties, and they filming it and showing it, and because they know how it can be painful. And this is happening, and everyone in the world can see it, and not taking real action. This is the more painful part, I think, for us.
They're not paying attention. Well, the purpose here is our viewers, we hope, will take action. We're going to take another break. After that break, we'll bring Dee Dee back, and we'll talk about things that our viewing audience, listening audience, can do to make a real difference here. Thank you, Cyrinush, for your bravery, for your willingness to tell this story. You know, I'd be curled up in a ball in the corner, I'm afraid. You are full of courage, and you've come out. So thank you so much for joining us here. All right, you may have questions about this. You may want more information. You can email us at afr@piratemoneyradio.com. We'll pass along your thoughts and questions to Save the Persecuted Christians. Learn more at savethepersecutedchristians.org. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll be back with Dee Dee Lageson from that group and from Remnants of the Sword.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.
Washington said paper money opens the door to every species of fraud and injustice. Jefferson said paper is poverty. Hamilton said to emit an unfunded paper as the sign of value ought not to continue a formal part of the Constitution. The founders hated paper money, so they put a pirate money clause in the Constitution for our state to use. Learn more at transactionalgold.com.
Pirate Money Radio, helping you give, spend, and invest in ways that align with liberty, security, and values. Welcome back with your host, Kevin Freeman.
Yeah, we're talking about, it's a beautiful Saturday morning, but we're talking about a very difficult but important subject. There's a genocide underway. A little over 100 years ago, a genocide in the same country sowed the seeds for the Holocaust of World War II. Political discourse makes it acceptable to talk about wiping out Christians and destroying Israel? This is a crazy time in which we're living. History is rhyming. It doesn't always repeat, but it's rhyming. We have some visitors at Liberty Hawk Ranch. We've shared some clips from a short documentary titled Remnants of the Sword. You can watch it free at SaveThePersecutedChristians.org. And we're grateful to many friends who made this possible. One of them is Mercury One and Suzanne Grishman. Mercury One is connected to Glenn Beck, a good friend. And we're also grateful for our support from Patriot Mobile. There are only 3 things you can do with your money. You can give it, spend it, or invest it. Here at Pirate Money Radio, we work to explain solutions that support all 3 areas in ways that promote liberty, security, and values. Patriot Mobile, a mobile phone company, supports the Pirate Money Radio program. Patriot Mobile uses U.S. carriers, including AT&T, Verizon, and T-Mobile, and operates on both Apple and Android phones. More information about the Economic War Room and Patriot Mobile is available at piratemoneyradio.com/AFR. That's piratemoneyradio.com/AFR. And one thing I like, Patriot Mobile has been strong in pointing out where there's problems in the world that we need to address. They're proactive in that. And we've been speaking with someone else who's extraordinarily proactive in that. One of the hardest working people I know, Didi Lageson. Welcome back. You were here in the first segment. Welcome back to help us wrap up. This is really an awful testimony, and I think we have to hear it. It's hard to hear because this is the purpose killing of Christians solely due to their faith and ethnicity. Didi, I want to roll another clip from your Remnants of the Sword film, clip 4, and then we'll talk about it.
I am Lala Abgarian. I live in Armenia. My sister, Gayan Abgarian, worked in the military as a communication officer, ensuring our connection means. In September 2022, on September 12, early morning of September 13, we learned that Azerbaijan launched an attack against the territory of Armenia. I immediately called my sister's sons. My sister had 4 children, 2 girls and 2 boys. When I called, I asked my sister's son about Gayane. He told me that his mom was in the military posts and that they had no news. We were looking for my sister in all the morgues and hospitals. Eventually, we found Gayane, not in morgues or hospitals, but on the Azerbaijani telegram channels. It was my sister in the video where she was killed, stripped as a woman. The Azerbaijani soldiers were walking past my sister's body, kicking her, and saying some things in Azerbaijani. My sister's body was tortured. Her throat was cut crosswise. Her finger was cut, and it was terrible that they put the finger in her mouth. Her eye was gouged out. Her ear was cut. Her whole body was mutilated. At that time, we had no choice but to monitor the Azerbaijani channels to see what was going on with my sister's body. As they were uploading more videos on which the traces of torture were increasing. On the abdomen, as my sister was naked, they wrote Yashma and the number of the Azerbaijani military unit which committed this crime. It was not just the video. Caricatures were also created and circulated every day on different social platforms. We know, and we are used to, that there are casualties during the war, but such horrendous tortures and murders. Just the fact that you are a Christian and an Armenian surrounded by nations of different religions cannot serve as an excuse. I have faith. We are a Christian nation, and God will protect our country. And I would never wish anyone to pass through the horror that my family passed through.
Wow, that's a really just difficult testimony to watch. And Dee Dee, you put that in your film. What was it like making that movie?
You know, I was incredibly humbled to escort these witnesses that you'll see in the film, including Father Havanius as well, who is a priest of so many of these people. He was the abbot at Dadivan Monastery that is now occupied by Azerbaijan. And they targeted him. He made a phone call, and shortly thereafter, a missile hit the house he was eating dinner with. And the woman who was there, her 16-year-old son had his head split, and her 13-year-old son was also severely injured, as was she. Father Havanius was injured. These Azerbaijanis, these jihadists, are celebrating the death and destruction that they are wreaking on former Artsakh. As Siranush told us, they're literally bulldozing their cemeteries and throwing the remains away. They're dancing on the tops of churches as they tear down the crosses. They're etching out the Armenian scripture in these churches. They're just literally wiping away the history of the Armenians there. That is our history as Christians. This is our history, and they're literally just bulldozing it. It's horrific. So humbled to walk with these people who were so brave to come to the United States, and meeting after meeting after meeting with representatives in Congress, with the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom, at the State Department, telling their stories over and over and over again. And you saw with Siranush how difficult that is. Their emotions run high. And I'm just so happy to be able to come in and stand with them in solidarity with them, and encourage other Americans to do the same, to go to Armenia. The more U.S. American presence we can have in Armenia, it dampens down those threats that are coming both from Turkey and from Azerbaijan on a daily basis.
Well, it's been a year, and in the year since that happened, 23 Armenian prisons, including government officials, are still prisoners. They've, like you said, bulldozed monuments. They've scrubbed the history. Entire lives are erased. Tens of thousands of refugees attempting to rebuild in Armenia, but fearing that's the next place of attack. And Azerbaijan promises to eliminate all remnants of the sword. This is a frightening humanitarian crisis. And we're talking with Dee Dee Lageson. She's made this Remnants of the Sword. You can watch it at SaveThePersecutedChristians.org. Are you getting support, Dee Dee? What do we need to do? How can our American Christians help their Armenian brothers and sisters?
Well, first off, we have two ways to take action at SaveThePersecutedChristians.org, where you can encourage your member of Congress to support House Resolution 7288, which is the Armenian Protection Act, which will keep the United States from providing that military aid and military weaponry to Azerbaijan to then turn around and use against Armenians, and also this to stop COP Baku from being hosted in Azerbaijan. We say that American officials and world officials should not go there. If they do go there, every press conference they have, every opportunity they have, they need to be speaking about these prisoners of war still being held.
But America could say to our allies, our close allies, we're not participating, and they'd find another hotel somewhere else. They kick out, all right, so there's a conservative speaker that's speaking in Tennessee, and they just cancel them, and so they find a new hotel. They can find a new location other than the location of a genocidal regime.
They could host this in Bonn, Germany, where the UN climate headquarters is stationed. They could immediately turn it and host it there. Not likely, though, especially with the Biden administration so supportive of the climate catastrophists that exist at the UN. And this global power grab, they really, Artsakh, the people of Artsakh are an annoyance and an inconvenience for the UN's climate agenda.
So people can learn more and spread the word from SaveThePersecutedChristians.org. You can share this podcast, or it'll be found at afr.net or piratemoneyradio.com or wherever you get your podcast. You can share this and share these stories. That's your responsibility to tell the truth and stand up for the truth. But we can also pray. And I wrote down 3 prayers while we were preparing for this. Psalm 10:12, rise up, O Lord, O God, lift up your hand, do not forget the oppressed. And that's a good one. Psalm 91, of course, the whole chapter, Psalm 91. But whoever dwells in the shelter of the Most High will rest in the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress, my God in whom I trust. And 2 Corinthians 4:16-18. Therefore we do not lose heart, though outwardly we are wasting away, yet inwardly we are being renewed day by day. For our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. Now, I'm not just saying take it. I'm saying stand up and pray for the Armenian people that have been displaced from Artsakh. Any last word, Dee Dee?
This is an opportunity to stop a genocide before it happens, to stop Azerbaijan from taking all of Armenia, to stop Turkey from funding and supporting this. We need to stop this now.
All right, SaveThePersecutedChristians.org. If you have questions, email them to us at afr@piratemoneyradio.com. This is Kevin Freeman and Pirate Money Radio. We'll talk to you again next week.